Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, where the rabbis at Congregation Avas Torah each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the Parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. Rabbinic banter, I like to call it. I am Chaim Pupko, and I am joined by my dear friends and teammates, Rabbi Daniel Goldberg.
Shalom.
And Rabbi Morty Jesus.
Shalom.
All right, here we go. Our one pasuk for this week's Parsha, Parshas Vayakhel, the very first pasuk of the Parsha, Perek Lamed Hey, pasuk Aleph, chapter 35, verse 1, Vayakhel Moshe es kol adas b'nei Yisrael vayomer alehem. Moshe gathers the entire community of Israel and says to them, Eile hadvarim asher tzivo Hashem la'asos osam. These are the things that Hashem has commanded you to do, and he introduces Shabbos. Not for the first time, but he introduces to this part of the narrative the mitzvah of Shabbos right in the middle of the project of the Mishkan, which of course raises many fascinating conversations. But let's see what the rabbinic team has to say.
So I saw a comment from Rav Hirsch that was very subtle, rather simple thought, but I thought it was very profound. I would situate things a little differently. We have Truma and Tetzaveh, which is Mishkan, and then we have Kitisa, which is this enormous, breach of the Jewish people with Chet HaEgel, and then Tshuva, returning to Hashem, and Moshe returning with the second set of Luchos, and then we come back to the Mishkan for Vayakhel and Pekudei. And Rav Hirsch says something so profound, so important. He says that it's imperative to recognize that after this enormous breach, really the worst instance of infidelity of the Jewish people vis-a-vis Hashem, that we are able to achieve atonement. Moshe comes back with the second set of Luchos before we actually have a Mishkan. Meaning, if we had the Mishkan previously, if we already had that tool, you could draw the wrong conclusion that Mishkan was essential in coming back to Hashem. That after such a breach, the only way back was if you had a Mishkan or you had a Beis HaMikdash. And Rav Hirsch says no. It's important to recognize that the tshuva was accomplished, and then we proceeded to the Mishkan. The Mishkan was not essential. It came after the tshuva. And I think the idea here that Rav Hirsch is driving at is that often we think that because we live in a world without a Beis HaMikdash, that we simply lack the tools to have that kind of relationship with Hashem that we could have. And he's saying no. The Beis HaMikdash or Mishkan is a tool, is a vehicle, is a way to draw near to Hashem. It enables that. But it's not absolutely essential to that relationship. And we can have that relationship with Hashem even in a world without a Beis HaMikdash, just like the Jews could reestablish that relationship before they had a Mishkan.
Beautiful idea. I think I can add a layer to that. When you think about the setting in which Vayakhel Moshe is a very dramatic moment. Moshe gathers all the Jewish people and then he tells them, Eile hadevarim, like Rabbi Pupko mentioned, it refers to the laws of Shabbat. The Magid Midubna has a classic thought on this pasuk, and he wonders, why is it that Moshe is making this whole pomp and ceremony, and what is he introducing Shabbat, something that's so central to our lives? And what is it about Shabbat that makes it so unique and so critical to us as Jews and our observance? And he answers with a mashal. He says there was a king who had children who were ill, and he employs a doctor full-time. And each challenge that they face, the doctor comes up with some sort of remedy, and the children are healed, and he's so appreciative for it. One day, the children fall ill, and he comes to the doctor creates his remedy, and the children refuse to take it. And now the king is pulling out his hair. And the doctor says, you seem to be angry at me. Why are you angry at me? I created the remedy, they just have to take it. He said, well, if you weren't here and you didn't create the remedy, there would be little I can do to be angry at my children. It is what it is. That's the reality. I can't do anything about it. But now that the remedy is right there and they're not taking advantage of it, it is doubly troubling to me. It is so frustrating. Says the Magid Midubna, Shabbat is refu'ah for our neshama. Every single week, we have certain challenges. We go through the vicissitudes of life and it bears down on us. But every Shabbat we get recharged. Every Shabbat we're capable of coming out on the other side. And when Hashem sees that we don't take advantage of it, he's frustrated by the fact that it's right there in front of us and we're neglecting to appreciate it. And I think just to highlight what Rabbi Goldberg said before, it gives an understanding that sometimes it's the mitzvot themselves that can allow us to come closer to Hashem. We don't necessarily need a mishkan or any major moment or to sacrifice ourselves in the process. It's possible for us in the way of our daily observance to find opportunities in which we can strengthen our relationship with Hashem. And there's no greater opportunity and no greater remedy in the world than that of the observance of Shabbat. When we allow ourselves to recognize the power of Shabbat and the way it can spiritually heal us and recharge us for the weeks ahead, we too will take advantage. And that's why Moshe felt he had to do it on a grand stage, Vayakhel Moshe Ta'am, the entire nation, because this was something that was truly critical to our survival.
One moment every week that gives me pause to think about just the power of Shabbos is when we sing Yedid Nefesh at Shalosh Shudas, because I don't know what you do at the BSC.
We don't.
Sudash Lishit. But we also, do you begin Shabbos with Yedid Nefesh?
We do not.
Okay, so this, I have to say, is one of these beautiful elements of Minhag Ashkenaz. We start Shabbos by singing Yedid Nefesh, and we ostensibly end Shabbos by singing Yedid Nefesh at Shalosh Shudas. And to me, I visualize it when I start Shabbos and we sing Yedid Nefesh. It's like I'm entering into a tunnel, and like there's this beautiful light at the end of this tunnel, and like that's Shabbos. I kind of leave my week, I go into this tunnel of Yedid Nefesh and like come out the other side, and it's like Shabbos. Yedid Nefesh is like I enter entry into Shabbos. And then Yedid Nefesh, we end Shabbos also with Yedid Nefesh. And to me, it's a moment where I think every Shabbos, like, okay, like where was I when I entered the tunnel of Shabbos, and this is like part of my like exiting Shabbos. And I think about what have I experienced? In what ways have I grown? What were the special, meaningful moments? How has this recharged me for the week ahead? So I love to use Yedid Nefesh as these like coordinates for like the inclusio for a very meaningful Shabbos.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's what you gain when you have something like a bookend, right? You have bookends, right?
Yes.
When the nusach returns you back to where you started, that's how you're able to then internalize what that's all about.
Yes.
That's really
you
nice.
Mark it. Yeah.
That's really nice. What you said, Rabbi Kasus, also reminds me of a little bit of a philosophical concept that Rabbi Soloveitchik would discuss, and Avram Yeshua Heschel as well. The notion of Shabbos being a sanctuary in time, right? It's not just sacred time, it's an actual sanctuary in time, meaning that by blocking off this time, it creates an environment that you couldn't experience otherwise.
A palace in time. Right?
A palace in time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Heschel said palace in time?
I think so.
Yeah. You're right. Very good. I was very caught this year looking at this pasuk that we're discussing, and I thought that perhaps Vayakhel Moshe, that act of bringing them together, it doesn't say that Hashem told Moshe to do it, that it was really Moshe's initiative, and it was a very deliberate act. It wasn't just to set the stage for what he was about to speak to them about, Shabbos, the next pasuk, but rather Vayakhel Moshe was Moshe's attempt to reconstitute the Jewish people after Chet HaEgel. And not just to reconstitute, but to show the Jewish people that you're still here. You're still standing, and Hashem still loves you and still wants a relationship with you. And how does Moshe do that? He does that with Vayakhel Moshe, by bringing everyone together. And I think there's a lesson in this, in that I think what Moshe is teaching here is that there is an atonement, there's a kapara in coming together, that in the wake of the sin of the golden calf, just the Jewish people responding to that summons to come together and to be together and stand together as a kehila, as one congregation, that in and of itself is an act of tshuva and an act of atonement. It's similar to the idea that when we daven with a minyan, so then Hashem looks at view of the minyan as opposed to people's individual shortcomings, that when we're part of the klal, we achieve something greater, a greater status. And so I think Vayakhel Moshe deliberately gathers the people together so that they should have atoning experience of being together. And so that's why Shabbos appears here at this moment, because Shabbos is the time when we gather most. Historically, this isn't just an American phenomenon. No, historically, Shabbos is the time when people come together.
So Ki Ish Echad B'Lev Echad was a kind of necessary condition before we got the Torah. And then this was almost like kind of bringing us back. Vayakhel is almost bringing us back to that state.
Yeah.
As utilizing that vehicle of unity to create the spiritual environment that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Not just merely relying on whatever it is that we're getting at that moment, but recognizing that there's also an additional value to us coming together in the process of doing whatever it is that the moment is calling for, which is a very interesting way of viewing this.
Which always reminds me of how the community's platform, that we enable so much by living in community, and that people are able not just to meet people they never would have met, but people are able to chip in and help people that just today, I called someone to get some volunteers to set up for a Shiva home of people who've been living in the shul for decades. And I called someone who's been living here for a few years, and then it happens, and people step up, and all of that occurs because we cherish community.
It's better than bowling alone.
It's better than bowling alone. Oh, I will continue to beat that drum.
Tamar zein lo yelo levechod Af Yisrael